I'll speak to that restaurant and also investors, right? The best part is to be very clear and good with your communication, right? And from a restaurant standpoint, it goes two ways. So we ended up being in Atlanta last night. Just my wife and I just happened upon this like really incredible restaurant called The Optimist, and the customer service was just tremendous, right? They just came in, just enough touches, not overly touches, right? Would make sure it was explained well. It was a seafood restaurant. They had the right service with the way they prepared the table, right? The experience was there from that part, right? So the people felt welcomed. They were welcome to the table. They explained the menu. They were given the options. You could see the service. You could see how well it was maintained, the restaurant. So,
hi everybody, Jose Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Morales Group Show. Today we have Jason Yarusi. He's based out of Tennessee with holdings right around 3,000 units. Today he is actually going to be talking about his 100-mile mindset, which is a technique that he uses to achieve any goal in life. So if you're looking to achieve any goal in life, you want to learn about the 100-mile mindset. If you have challenges in your life, he's going to teach you how to overcome them here today. Welcome to the show, Jason. How are you?
doing great. How are you? Psyched to be here.
I love it. I love it. So for our viewers that don't know who Jason Yarusi is, who is Jason Yarusi? And then how did you get involved in building a real estate portfolio right around 3,000 units?
Sure. So, I'm a bartender who just made some select decisions to just start changing my life, right? So I was born and raised in New Jersey, lived in Manhattan for about a decade, then back out to New Jersey, came out of school and just didn't have a course of direction. And so did what I thought was the right thing and just started picking up odd jobs, right? So that led me into working a lot of New York City bars. I ended up running a very, very large outside New York City bar, and then started open up restaurants and open up breweries and sold a brewery. And then Hurricane Sandy happened, a big storm out in the East Coast, decimated over a couple 100,000 houses. And my dad had a very unique business. He just retired, where he did heavy construction, moving and lifting houses. So this is right, 2010 is that all this happens, all this flooding, all this storm damage, and my dad's business goes from doing about 10 jobs a year to having thousands of phone calls a day, and really just took his business to a whole other level. My brother was working for me in the city at the bar I had, and then my now wife Peely was also working for me. We jumped out, ended up moving out of those businesses, went out there and just helped dad take his business to really where he always wanted to. It just never had the volume of work. So that was on early 2010, 2011, 2012. We went from doing those 10 to 12 jobs a year to about 250 to 300 of these heavy construction projects a year. So it just got crazy. But what was the through line is everything I had done in my life was something that I would show up and have to do some service, right? So, you think serve a beer, waiting on the table, or just go to do a construction job where I had to do some activity to produce income, right? And that's like a lot of life, right? You show up, you have to do something, but the jobs were so technical, right? The construction job was so technical that I couldn't take myself out of the job. My dad's experience, 4 generations of experience, 50 years of experience, right? Very competent person that was doing these high intensive jobs. We couldn't take ourselves out of the job. So, we could do 8 days and 25 hours of work if we were there, but we could never pull ourselves outside of it. And if we did, then no money would be made. So we kept asking the question, what else is there out there? And the word that kept coming up was real estate. So we did what we thought was logical at the moment, is that my wife, Peely, pregnant with our first kid at the time, went out and got a real estate license. And we started flipping houses and doing wholesaling and doing Airbnb. And, that was going good, right? But what we really got to is that here we are very busy with construction. Peely's pregnant with the first kid, and now we have almost another job because we're flipping these homes, we're doing all these other activities, we're doing busy on top of busy. So we kept asking, like, what else is there out there? And I met someone doing some out-of-state rentals, and we said, interesting. So instead of buying single family houses, we brought a couple of 2 families and 3 families, basically 1,000 miles from where we are in New Jersey. And it forced us to have to put a plan, a process, and a team in place to be able to accomplish the mission. But what this did, it did two things, right? It allowed us to get to the point to find passivity in the way we were doing it. Even though we were still controlling the project, we were not there running the Home Depot, doing this, meeting contractors. We had teams in place, and lo and behold, income or rent started showing up right at our doorstep. However, we discovered it wasn't scalable. It's not like I was going to have 50 duplexes around town. It just seemed like a logistical nightmare. So I came upon someone who was buying large apartment buildings, and that was that light bulb moment where I said, "Oh, that's really interesting because it ties together all the components." I had done businesses where they're comparable businesses, like a restaurant that was a small restaurant and large restaurant. I got it. It's the same process, but you could get a lot more volume out of the big restaurant. Well, the same thing came with multifamily. I was like, oh, it makes sense why a big apartment complex would be so valuable and be able to get the economies of scale. So we sold off the small properties, went all in, and back in 2017, we brought our first 94 unit over in Louisville, Kentucky. And since then, we've brought about 3,000 units. About 90% of it's been multifamily. We're in 7 states right now. The other 10% has been self-storage, some office, and we have some ground-up development here in Middle Tennessee.
I love it. I love it. Congratulations, man. You know what I love about it? That you try different things. You're like, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different way. And you kept searching until you found that different way. And I think for a lot of people, they think because something didn't work out that that's the only way to do it, but you kept searching. So what I wanted to get into was more or less of the 100-mile mindset. What is it? How did you come across it? Who does it help?
You know, right before that, I want to just jump on one thing you just said right there. It's so true, right? With real estate, it's so hard to get started because when you say the topic real estate, it can mean a million things, right? You can go, tax liens, you can go do wholesaling, flipping, you could do condo conversions, you could do ground up, you could do everything under the sun, right? And you hear all these things, you go to all these meetings, you go to these parts, and there's everything always sounds good, right? The next thing always sounds better than the last thing you just heard, right? So you just never get started because you're always like, well, what's the perfect thing for me to do? And the through line is you're not going to know until you start. Right. So people ask like, hey, if you went back, like, would you just go straight to multifamily? Like, yeah, that's where I want to be today. But without the evolution of saying, okay, flipping, like this is what I like and don't like about flipping, wholesaling. Okay, here's where I am. Like without the evolution of trying all those things and realizing they weren't the right fit for us, I would have never transcended to where I was. And if I did jump right into multifamily, I probably wouldn't have been as ready as I was getting all the pieces together because a lot of the questions became answered as part of the journey. So if you're standing on the sideline right now and say, man, like, I just want to get into real estate, you just pick one and start. Because the worst thing that happens is you at least eliminate something. Like you're like, I'm going to go flip a house. Okay, so I don't have the money. Well, go find someone you can work with. And maybe like, I don't like flipping. I don't like contractors. Well, great. Now you just know you don't want to flip. What else can we do in the real estate part? And when we do that, it puts us on a path here where we're taking action and moving the ball forward, where most of us, we stand there with our feet in the sand, right? And I was guilty of this, very guilty, right? Listen to all the shows, like great podcasts like yours, just getting on these things. And everybody's doing so many great things. But where should I start? And that's not the answer. The answer is just get started. First thing that comes to mind, because you'll at least either find something that's great, you start going down the path, at least you're on the right path, or you've eliminated something. So that leads me into the 100-mile mindset. The big thing here is that I really started doing a lot of running, right? We get out of school, your friends go different ways, you grow up doing sports, like no one's around, everybody has jobs, you start having kids, you start just doing stuff, right? So I didn't have this activity or I was finding all these sports, so I started running. So I started doing a lot of marathons, right, New York City Marathon, I think I did in 2008, and I'd done dozens and dozens since then. Came upon ultra marathons, and that was 2018. Ultra marathon is basically anything longer than a marathon. A marathon's 26.2 miles, so it could be anything up, right? So I came upon doing a 100-mile race. And with the 100-mile race, I was like, man, how do I get ready for this? Marathons, there's typically a training program. Lots of things there can be a training program. But with the marathon, maybe a couple weeks before the race, you're going to run 20-mile races, right? You're going to run a couple 20-mile runs, just get used to it. But I was like 100 miles, like 2 weeks out from the 100-mile race. I'm not going to run like 80-mile races out there. I'm not going to do that. It's like, what else do I do? And what came to my mind was like, I can't control what I can't control. What I can control is getting up every day and just running. So preparing for that race each and every day for the course of a year, I just got up every single day and ran 6 miles, no matter what. no matter what. I would run at least 6 miles every single day. So, my foot hurt, I'd run. My ear hurt, I'd run. I'm sick, I'll run. If it's snowing out, I'll run. If it's 100 degrees out, I'll run each and every day. Because I knew if I would just get there, that I'd put myself in a position here to control what I control. I can get up and I can do it every day. And most of the time, we're waiting for that perfect moment. Oh, I'd get up and run, but it's raining out, right? Or I'd get up and do this, right? Or think of anything. Like when I have enough money in the bank, then I'll get out there and go buy my first real estate. Oh, when I read this next book, I'll go out there and make the first call to that broker, right? So you think about anything. But what you can control is just start taking action steps. So when I got to this race, I said, I don't know how to run 100 miles. So think of any goal, right? Any goal you had right now, like even buying the first 94 units. Like if you haven't done it, you don't know how to do it because you've never done it. So we stand on the sideline and say, that is so scary to do that I'm never going to get started because just the thought of buying a 94 unit, like how am I going to raise all that money? How am I going to figure out that debt? Who's going to want to partner with me? How am I going to find this? Like what if, the building lights on fire? Like all these things will scare you from ever getting started. But the goal is we have to take a step to learn the journey. So I started this race saying, if I just stand here today and take the first step and just think, man, I have to run 100 miles, well, I still have 99.9 miles to go, right? I'm just gonna be like, I might as well give up now because I got 100 miles to go. So I said, I know how to run 6 miles. So what if I just run 6 miles to the first drink station and let me just get there and figure it out, right? So I get there to the first six miles, I get to the drink station and I say, okay, I've done this. Okay, can I just run to the next aid station? Okay, so I've run the next 6 miles. Okay, can I just run to the next aid station, right? And at any point, if I wanted to give up, I'd say, okay, you know what? I get it. Like right now, I want to give up. But like before I just give up right now, let me just run to that next spot. And it might be another 500 feet. It might be another 200 feet. Maybe like, hey, can I just get to the bridge? And if I get to that bridge and I still want to quit, right, then I'll throw in a towel. But when you get to the bridge, most of the points here, you're always at that next stop, so you keep going. So maybe I'll run another 200 feet. Let me just run to that next aid station. Okay, now another 500 feet. Okay, can I just do 100 more feet? And lo and behold, I turn around and I've accomplished 100 miles in a series of 6 mile races. And that's how we complete our goals in life. If you think about your goal and say, today I'm going to buy an apartment building, you're going to be scared to take started because it's so grand, it's so outside, it's so foreign, right? You may have no one on your side to support you. You may have no one that you know to do it. But if you can say, hey, what is that first step I can take today? Well, I know my brother's friend is in real estate. Maybe I can call him up and say, hey, do you know anybody who brought apartment buildings? Hey, maybe Jose's got this great podcast. Maybe I can get on the podcast and listen to him and see how he is taking his life accordingly with what direction you take, right? Then I can take one of those parts, take a call to action and move out there, right? Because when you take that first step, what do you learn? You learn either what to do, you learn the next question, or you learn what not to do. And that's the series of taking life one step at a time instead of worrying about the end result because we can't control the end result, right? We have a bunch of people come into our mastermind, like, how long is it going to take me to buy a building? I'm like, it could be 3 months, it could be 15 months. It's going to be the work and it's going to be the time and the commitment to do it. It will happen if you take the steps. It's going to happen, but you just have to put down the work knowing that you're going to spend the time in the journey. Because I get to the first 94 unit, I buy that. My life didn't stop. It wasn't like, oh, I'm set for life. It's over, right? I'm good. The next day shows up and the sun comes up again. And now I have to go out and figure out what's the next step. So the goals are just mile markers, right? That's it. You're spending your time in your journey. That's your life. You're going to hit these mile markers and you're building this resume of these goals that you keep knocking down. So don't worry about the goal. Worry about the action steps. It's going to lead you on a path to your success that you can control.
Do you ever believe in in going to work for somebody that's somewhat doing what you're already wanting to do? Like meaning
100%.
like let's say I want to potentially get into owning large apartment complexes as opposed to just starting like calling people, just going to work for somebody like you. If you want to learn how to be a real estate
100%.
agent, go work for the best real estate agent. Want to be a doctor, go
100%.
work for the best real estate doctor. Just to kind
It's
of get a feel if you like it and then go 100% in on that.
I see that two ways. People will come work. I'll even have sometimes people be investors. They're like, man, can I just come invest? And I'm like, sure. Like, because we have a lot of passive investors who will come into our syndications, right? And it's that they're like ready, but they're just not ready, right? And so just coming in, don't invest. It will just pull back the curtain enough. They'll just see the operations, come to some of the calls. And next thing you know, they're out there doing themselves, right? And so, yes, coming to work for someone, having a key role as part of the team to just understand any part of the process, but also what interests you, right? In the multifamily world, You could be in many different sides, right? Just from the operation side, you could be lead generation, you could be asset management, you could be underwriting, you could be capital raising, investor education, loan sponsor, balance sheet. Like you could be so many different parts of the role, whether it's one or all of them. So you could get on a team, and if any of those things pique your curiosity right there, you could be valuable to someone, right? So you think about that. I can come bring someone value and then learn how they're doing it as part of their business. And it gets you into the game to discover where you want to go with it, right? And that's a great resource.
What was the most challenging thing in doing the ultra marathon, the 100 miles?
You know what it is that when you set out with ideas in your mind, it's just understanding that that's a recipe for a disaster, right? And so I was reading something the other day where there's the opportunist is great to have, but they typically are the most disappointed because they have it. The pessimists usually set up for failure because they assume it's going to be a part of failure, and then like the realist. The real opportunist is like the paradox, the Stockdale paradox is that they're realistic opportunists is that they're realistic with how bad it is right now, but they think it's going to get better, right? And so when I first started doing these races, I would come out with an idea in mind. So like just like the race we were just talking about, I was like, okay, I'm going to run the uphills and I will keep my feet dry. And if I do that, I'm going to have a great race, right? So 3 miles in, it's too steep to run. So, okay, that's out of the run. The 4th mile in is the first of 4 rivers to cross. So I was like, okay, right? New rule, no rules, right? You just got to go out there and take action and discover where it is. Because when we set up in our mind how it's supposed to go, we set ourselves up for a disaster, right? So if you say, oh, it's going to be perfect, I'll have this perfect hydration, perfect thing, right? You just have wild cards. You run the first 50 miles with your legs, the last 50 miles are with your mind. And you could be perfect one moment, and the next moment, your mind's taking a wild change, and it's just it's a rough couple miles right there. But it's just like anything you think from entrepreneurship, owning businesses, is that you can have a perfect day, but then something, we're here to solve problems and solve solutions. So there's going to be a problem come up because the bigger things we do, the more problems that we solve to get to bigger parts, right? So think about that from a race or from any challenge you have. Like we shy away from challenges a lot. We should want the challenges. Because if we're going after the challenges, we're solving big problems. You think about most who are just doing these massive big things in the world is that they've provided a solution to something that was a problem for a lot of people. So when we change our narrative, right? Well, the problems are not really problems. They're my opportunity to find solutions. A lot of things open up for you. A lot of things come into your world because it's no longer, woe is me, these are all the things holding me back. It's just, here's all the opportunities I have to try something that could be helpful.
Got it. I love it. When you were doing the 100 mile race, was there ever instances where you wanted to throw in the towel? And what were
Oh,
you
like
telling yourself?
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, like anything, just like that. And the part is there's always that moment you can stop. But right now, it's usually a fleeting moment, right? It's usually that fleeting moment, right? They say you never fail if you don't give up, right? It's the same thing in a race, right? There's always that point like, hey, oh man, if I just stop. But you just keep yourself going, right? Like if you're like, oh man, I give up, I can't find this building, right? It's like that 2 foot for goal principle right there. Well, what if that 2 more calls does it? What if that, 3 more property walks does it? Right? What if that next investor conversation does it? Right? So yeah, it's that thought, but the thought is, okay, I give up. Now what? What am I going to do now? Right? Sometimes you're out in the middle of the race. I know I still got to walk back somewhere. It's like, well, I might as well just keep running at this point because I'm out here. I'm out here already. So what am I doing? I walk back. It's like, now I got to do that. Just keep running. And when you keep going, you find yourself that you'll lose your rhythm. And that's where it's good to have guides or have other people around you that can be on your side to get apart, because you want to just keep in the general direction and just keep people by your side that can keep you on the course, right? So maybe I'll have my wife and kids at a race and I'll see them every 20 miles or something, and it would just be that check-in, right? It's like bring me back to the lighthouse, right? Many times in our life is that we just have to stay the course and just find our way to stay close enough to the road that we're in the direction of where we need to go. Is the road going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be straight? Absolutely not. Is it going to be perfectly paved? No, that's not wish it's going to be. But if we just keep our eye on the path right there, we'll find 1 foot in front of the other, get you to exactly where you deserve to be.
What made you want to do the 100 mile race?
I came upon it and just it was the thought of something that was going to put me outside of my comfort. you get stuck in a rhythm, right? And rhythms are scary things. There's good rhythms, but everything's changing, right? So if you're doing the same thing every day, like the world's changing around us, the world's moving around us, and is that sometimes the patterns of our life get us so comfortable, and it could be good. Like we could be doing good, and if you're absolutely satisfied with your life, you're perfect, right? Cool, like absolutely 100% all for you. But if you're saying I have more, right? You have to ask yourself what the pattern of your life right now is. The pattern of your life having you so comfortable in the good that it's keeping you from being great? Because good really is one of those things that can distract us from being great. We were doing fine flipping houses. We were doing fine. Like we were doing good, right? But just it was never going to be that scale, that ability to transcend where we are, right? And so it was that pain point where we're making some good money flipping that we just had to stop, right? And so you have that short term pain, but it's the long term reward. And generally, we fear a lot that short term pain because we think it's going to be just everything, right? And so you can think of anything. Like imagine you're in a job, you're moving up the corporate ladder, you hate your job, but there's that ability. If I just stay in a little bit longer, I'm going to be at a certain point in my life. It's going to be, my parents told me I should do this. I went to school for this, but you're just not into it, right? So the pain is that you may walk out from that and lose that income for a moment, but have a bunch of family disappointed at other points. But maybe the reward is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now, you've opened up that hot dog stand. I don't know. You've opened up something that you love doing. You've gone out there and served a purpose that now you have a fulfilled life. And the value you get from that allows you to have the rewards that you've been missing because you've been doing something else that wasn't really your dream.
Got it. What advice would you give to somebody looking to build a restaurant?
Build a restaurant. Restaurants are very difficult, right? I think Manhattan, it would take you like what is it, 7 years for someone to go to every single restaurant in Manhattan, like at night and night, right? It's a really difficult part. Do it for something that you love, but you also have to be reasonable. But like, just because you love it doesn't mean everybody else is going to love it. So you have to be in a part that's easily accessible, has to have some demand. You have to have a reason why people are going to come there, not only once and twice. You have to have an efficient part and process, right? And you have to think about this. Am I doing something that's going to be very limited or fast service, high-end fast service, right? Or am I do something that's 12 seats, right? Where it's very culture, very nature, like the story is having like one turn for the night. So you have to think about your style, your recipe, and how it fits what you're doing, right? Because many times people are like, they can make great meals, but they can't be great efficient restaurant owners or business owners, because the business side of it is that it can be very expensive from all the labor side to be able to cook the meals, do other parts, to do everything that just runs outside of the restaurant. So if you can't have people coming in the door, it's a hard thing to keep running in the cycle.
So basically, you kind of get into the cycle where you want to focus on driving business to have employees, but it's a
You have to look at your experience, because especially today, a lot of your ability to perform is based on reviews, right? So there's that crunch of performance, right? Customer service, and then of course price, right? You can have the cheapest thing and then horrible service, and still nobody's going to want to come. And you can have the most expensive thing and the best service in the world, and you have a list out a line out the door, right? So you have to think about, where do you fit in, what can be valuable to where you are, and what can be practical from a point that's going to fit the neighborhood, right? Like if I was here in Middle Tennessee compared to, in New York City, there may be two different recipe types or two different restaurant types or two different, ideas, concepts that serve, where maybe the concept that I'm doing in New York City may not fit Murfreesboro. Maybe will fit like into a Nashville, right? So you have to look at who's going to come there and why are they going to come there, and what's my ability to build rapport and repeat customers. Because the repeat customers, especially for the local area, right? That's what you need. You need people that are going to be like, you ever heard like Kevin Kelly, like my 1,000 True Fans, right? You
Mhm.
need people that are just going to come there. That's your place. When like, when they have a special thing, they're going to come there. When they have someone in town, they're going to come there, right? When the game's on, if that's your thing, they're going to come there, right? They're going to be your bloodline to keep the business running. And then other people will come to fill in the gaps.
What's the best way to build repeat customers in a restaurant?
I'll speak to that. Restaurant and also investors, right? The best part is to be very clear and good with your communication. right? And from a restaurant standpoint, it goes two ways. So we ended up being in Atlanta last night. Just my wife and I just happened upon this like really incredible restaurant called The Optimist, and the customer service was just tremendous, right? They just came in, just enough touches, not overly touches, right? Would make sure it was explained well. It was a seafood restaurant. They had the right service with the way they prepared the table, right? The experience was there from that part, right? So the people felt welcomed. They were welcome to the table. I explained the menu. They were given the options. You could see the service. You could see how well it was maintained, the restaurant. So everything aligned with what they were trying to do there, right? It was a high-end seafood restaurant. The service was high-end. The food was high-end. The way they were preparing their drinks, their meals, even the staff, the way the staff was dressed, everything fit the narrative, right? So from that part, from the customer service point, it looked top-notch, right? It was white glove service front to back, from everything from the person who sat you at the table to all the way to the end to the checkout, right? So if you look at that, you're like, okay, there was nothing missing. They thought it all through. So that experience is something that comes for the experience. And you can think about it from the investor standpoint, right? You'll hear about people who invest in someone and be like, or invest with someone and be like, yeah, I gave this person money and I guess the project's doing good. I'd never hear from them, right? Or you have the other side is that, someone sends you in funds and we try to over communicate with our investors is that, we'll send the confirmation is there. They get their closing email. They get their monthly report. They're welcome to jump on calls with us anytime. Just ask about this part. They can get into the investor portal. They can have the experience to be informed, right? So now they have all the information, and what it actually eliminates the questions, because most of the time we're oversupplying an information. So it's given them more than the questions they have. Now, are they going to have questions? One or two? Sure. They're welcome to have them. But it's better to have them come out questions when they're overinformed than to have questions like, hey, what's going on with that project? Haven't heard from you in months. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Is the building occupied? Are you building? It's not that unknown for the investor.
Yeah, absolutely. So over communication and experience. What about for flipping? What type of advice would you give somebody looking for flipping properties?
You know, Flipping is, again, you're going to find your model, right? There's a low end, a first time home buyer. There's of course high end houses right there. We did really good on the first time home buyer. We just had a plan in place, and we were not trying to over improve the building, right? Over improve the flip to what we wanted. We need to make sure it fit the market. And we were very cookie cutter with the same finishes where we were doing everywhere, right? Instead of trying to say like, HGTV, like this house is this crazy design, right? Because you lose money and money is lost in time. And time comes up in decision making. So if you're thinking for a week, what tile should you put in the bathroom, right? You're losing tremendous time because of all the holding costs and all the things that you don't really see, right? You can figure out how much the tiles going to cost, but you may lose track of, okay, what's my holding cost, right? Like what's my utilities, right? What's my taxes? What's my insurance for this month? What's my debt service for this month? And you lose track of that, where all of a sudden you may get to the back and say, oh, I was going to make 25,000, 50,000, 75,000, and it ends up being 18,000, which, okay, cool. But you lost that money because you were wasting time making decisions. And I do the same thing for the multifamily buildings, is that we try to do our unit turns. When we do unit turns for leasing, for renovations, we try to do them standard. So each time a tenant moves out, we already know exactly what's going to be the renovation package for the unit. Because your time and your money is lost when you have, of course, vacancy and the cost to redo that unit, and then also the cost to lease it. So if I can cut that down from, say, 5 weeks to 2 weeks, or 5 weeks to 3 weeks, right? That's an additional 2-3 weeks that I pick up a rent that year. Now, couple that across 100-unit buildings, say we turn 50 of them, I've just saved anywhere between 100 to 75 to 100 weeks that I get additional income on. So if you think about it backwards like that, time cures a lot of issues.
Time is money on it. What are some of the things that you've learned along the ways from, obviously you started off at 94 units, now you're nearly 3,000. What are some of the most important lessons that you've learned in that journey?
Very specific with markets, right? We're in 7 markets now, but I spent probably my first 2-3 years just in Louisville. I had like 400 or 500 units there before I moved. And I was not just in all of Louisville, I was in very specific submarkets. Because if you think about anywhere you are, right? Like if I'm in Murfreesboro, if I drove a half hour from Murfreesboro, I couldn't tell you what it was like. right? When I grew up in New Jersey, I would be in, up by, I was in Westfield. It's up by like Elizabeth Rawway. If you were to ask, hey, what's it like an hour south of you in South Jersey? I have no idea. So when people try to invest in certain assets and they just invest in, all of Georgia or all of Florida or all of Tennessee, they put themselves at a disservice because they don't know the neighborhoods, right? They're not local enough to understand the parameters of the project. It could be anything. Maybe they're on the wrong side of the tracks. Maybe it's a poor school zone. Maybe the path of progress is going the other way. So they lose value and not clearly understand the market. The next is having the right team, right? So here I'm around a lot of properties now, but I spend a lot of time in New Jersey investing in properties that are 1,000 miles away. So I can have the perfect plan, but if I don't have the right team to implement the plan, then it doesn't matter my plan, right? So the property managers, right? So important. Having the right property manager that understands the asset that you're buying, that you're investing in, and has the background, the pedigree, and the ability to perform, that puts you empowered, because now you can go make decisions, and you can make decisions that they can implement on. But because of their nature of understanding that the asset class and just the market, they'll be able to give you good guidance, because maybe you're off the line, you're unaligned on your business plan, right? So doing that puts you in the best spots to succeed, because now you have the right team around you.
Got it. How would you select a market or a submarket? Like, what are some tips there?
So I'll give you a couple pieces. Is that first is, again, any market to start with a few parts, because many times we spend a lot of time just finding a market, but people win in every market. Your market, my market, every other market around us, there's someone in that market killing it, right? So your goal is to find a market. I go with, I want to be in major markets. I want to be in markets that have 250,000 people or more in the MSA. So that doesn't mean just in the town, but in the surrounding metropolitan statistical area, I want 250,000 people. I want it to be landlord friendly. I want to have reasonable occupancy rates. I want to have job growth, and job diversity is a big one, right? So when you think of job growth, right, more jobs coming in, but the diversity part, I don't want one employer where if that one employer went down, it really hampers or dampens the market. Then I'll also look at population growth. I'll look at new construction or new builds that are coming on as part of impacting right there. And then places that are in proximity and places I want to go. Right. So I started out looking at a couple markets, and it was Greensboro, North Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, and San Antonio. San Antonio in Texas, I love the market, but it was just too far for me to get there religiously, where I could get there in the morning and get back at night. Greensboro, we started doing it, just weren't finding our traction. And we moved over to Louisville and get highly focused in Louisville. And from New Jersey, I get there in the morning and get back at night. So it gave me that ability to not have to be there, but still be versatile to get there. Plus, it has, from a job standpoint, GE, UPS, Humana, FedEx, Churchill Downs, Yum Center, what's called, who else would be there? Aetna, right? So it has all these different job providers. Amazon Fulfillment Center has all these different job providers that no one moving out or shutting down was going to disrupt the nature of the area. And then I got very specific with where blue collar working class neighborhoods were. And that was in the South and the South Central submarkets of Louisville.
I love it. That's awesome. And then, what about selecting the right team? What would you say? Like, obviously, you can say, "Hey, look, select the right team," but a lot of people struggle with that. Even in the real
Yeah.
estate space, a lot of people have a high turnover. They get really excited about hiring somebody. Like, what do you look for to hire the right people?
So I'd speak to property managers first, right? But you got to make sure, like, so a property manager, if I'm going to buy a 100-unit building, and it's going to be a class C or class B building, right? So it's going to deal with that class C, that working class neighborhood tenant. I don't want someone who is a property manager that just does new construction, or just does class A properties, or just does single family houses, or just does condos, right? Or only has 100 units in their portfolio, right? Because then now I'm buying 100 units. So they basically have to double their business to do it, right? I want someone who's highly efficient, workforce housing, has 3, 4, 5, 6,000 units in their process right now, has some ability to have some construction experience they can handle on the turns, has back-end software that can navigate the process, right? So I'm just going to come in and I'll just be a speed bump, right? They'll just put me in the process because they already have a process for me. I don't want them trying it out, because most property managers will say, oh yeah, I can manage it, right? When they're managing 40 single family houses and they're like, yeah, I can take on your 200 unit. They have no idea how to do it, and they're not ready to do it. Right. And so you have to make sure the team aligns with your business plan. And so if your business plan is go out, buy a 100-unit building and turn 50 of the units and go and improve the building and move the tenant base and all these other points, you want the right property manager that does that in comparable properties around the city. From a point of just employees, like from my in-house staff, it's just what is the employee serving, right? And you can look at that point as that, what are they doing? Is it something that they're going to fill a gap? Are they going to take some things off your plate? Are they going to do things that you don't like doing? Is there something that they're just better at you doing, which there probably is, right? And how can I fill them in to keep pushing the business plan forward? For most any businesses, especially mine, the two main things is leads and money, right? If I have leads, multifamily leads coming in, I have the opportunity to have opportunity, right? But I need money, right? And I can go on debt and can go on raising capital, right? So if I have those two things in control, I have a hard to eliminate business plan.
What's the best way to generate leads for apartment complexes?
70% is going to come from brokers. The other 30% is going to come from everywhere. But the rule is where a lot fail is that if you're the broker and I just come to you, I want to buy multifamily, is that you're like, okay, you don't know you just have no idea how to help me, right? And so you don't know, you could send me a 2-unit, you could send me a 400-unit, right? You could send me a 12-unit, you could send me something, brand new, you could send me something 100 years old, and you did your job because that's what I told you. But it doesn't help me get anywhere closer because now I have to figure out how to underwrite all those things and how to manage all those things. So getting specific with what you want. So when we first went to Louisville, we said, I want to buy here's my parameters, 75 to 150 units, BC assets built between 1970 and 2000 in the South and South Central submarkets of Louisville. So I'd go to the brokers and tell them that, and they'd have their parameters. But it also kept me in check because if they got something on the east side, I'd say no. If it was 12 units, I'd say no. If it was 200 units, I'd say no. But then I could align the team for that too, so I knew how to operate and run those businesses better than anybody else. So when that opportunity came in front of me, I could act so quick and knock it down because I knew exactly how it worked. And it put me in the best position to win. And so instead of eliminating opportunities, it actually brought me the right opportunities. So instead of having 100 things that I had to look at and I just didn't know how to figure them out and I have to take the time and someone else would beat me to it, maybe I had 10 now, of which 2 were good and I could execute. So it put me in a position to win a lot quicker without a lot of wasted time.
Got it. What are some of the misconceptions in multifamily that you see? Like, is it, or some of the challenges that you see in multifamily, or even misconceptions?
So misconceptions is bigger is harder, and more things play in your power, the bigger you go, right? From a lender's perspective, would they feel better if there was 100 units or 1 unit? Well, the 100 units has 100 people that could potentially pay down the note, right? Where that 1 unit is strictly tied to that one tenant that's in there, right? So they're either there or they're not. And if they're not, then I have to hope that the owner of the building can pay it, right? So if you look at a building, the bigger it gives you more opportunities. It's the same process. So if you're going to buy a 10-unit or a 100-unit, it's easier to buy the 100-unit because you could treat it like a business, where the 10-unit, you can't have a full-time leasing person. You can't have a full-time maintenance person. Every time you need something, it's going to be more operationally inefficient and it's going to cost you more per unit. Where if you have a 100-unit building, you can treat it where you have a leasing person, you have a maintenance person, you have a whole team that works for the property to help the property push forward. So it gives you the best direction forward with the property because it can have a plan that's not separate because it's just 12 units that can't sustain or support the business plan.
Yeah. In your journey of going up to 3,000 units, what was the most challenging time, or what was the most challenging things that you've had?
There
How
are
did you overcome them?
every time is always challenging, and that's one thing to look back to think about, like where is the opportunity, is that we're on 2 cycles always. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was really hard to find leads, but money was everywhere. Debt was great. People, investors throwing money, but you can't find leads or just way outpriced, right? Now, spectrum, fear out there. Interest rates really hard to get the loans. Investors are scared. They're sitting on the sidelines, but more opportunities coming up front. And you're typically always going to be on one side or the other. You're never really going to have that perfect equilibrium. So the goal is just to understand that if you have to keep religious to the steps of just being disciplined, do the work, because the opportunities show up. and not waiting for the market to get to the top or to the bottom, because we're never going to know exactly when it's at the top or the bottom. So if you keep your core principles and your philosophy in the right pact, it's there. And then, stay away from the shiny objects. There's always shiny objects out there, and you can be boring and do very well, right? Like we could do 900 different things, like we said in real estate, but the ones who win, like they're winning in usually one really defined space, and then maybe they'll build from there. But they're not doing 20 spaces at once, because then their interest is split and their energy is everywhere but anywhere.
Got it. What's the ultimate goal for like units?
I Right now we put up a note with 5,000 units. Whether or not that matters if I get there, but we typically do the work to work for a deal a quarter, and that's our goal. Now, sometimes we'll get one deal in the first quarter, and maybe we'll get three in the third quarter and one in the fourth quarter. Right? It's not that we're going to make a deal; we're going to do the work, so we'll have deals happen, and that's what's put us in the best position to keep growing.
Got it. What does your team look like now?
So we have asset management, we have admin, we have investor education, we have investor relations, we have underwriting and capital raising. So that's my internal team. And then we have property managers. We manage, of the 3,000, we manage some of the more unique properties in-house. So about maybe 350 units. And then the rest are managed by off-site third-party property management companies. And then from the external standpoint, we have the property management companies, we have brokers, insurance people, all the people you need from your external partners as well.
Yeah. What would you say some of the biggest challenges that other individuals have, like people that attend your mastermind? Um,
We think more opportunity is better, and it's hard to break the narrative, right? And so, I had someone the other day is like, I had this broker send me 200 different leads, and it's in like 4 states, right? And it's just like it's so much information that you're never gonna. It's going to take you 4 months to get through it. And by the time you get through it, if there's a good opportunity there, there is someone in that market who knows it and is just focused in that market that literally closed that thing up in half a week. And you're here trying to just get through all the weeds of just saying, oh, I have all these opportunities. But a lot of times it's not a lot of opportunities. It's just a bunch of noise, because we can't be strict and disciplined with ourselves, right? And that's be strict and disciplined with yourself. And you may find that you start in a space, at least you learn the recipe, at least you learn the business plan. Worst thing that happens, you have to expand or move to a different market or do something different, but now you know how to do it. But when you're trying to learn the route in all these different markets and all these different types of asset classes and all this different types of product, right? You're trying to learn so much. It would be like if you're trying to, learn to be a physicist, a juggler, a dentist, and pick anything else all at the same time, right? Well, if you just did one, you'd probably get there a lot quicker. But you're trying to do them all at once, so it's going to take you a lot longer because you're trying to learn all these different things that aren't completely congruent.
so basically, almost like step one would be selecting the market that you want and selecting what type of units or what type of buildings you want to be in, and then going after that full force as opposed to saying, "Hey, look, I'll take anything that's from this to this
Correct.
nationwide." Because especially in multifamily, there's so many different variables that affect um, the performance of the building.
Anything usually gets you nothing, right? When if you're saying, oh, I'll take anything, right? But when you're very specific, you'll usually find it. And it's our reticular activator that kicks in. So if you think about it, you bought a car, right? You're like, man, I want to go buy a car. You're not just like, I want to just buy a car and just show up and just get a car, right? You know what you want, right? You're like, oh, I want to buy that Tesla, right? So that Tesla X, and you're next thing you know, they're everywhere, right? Are there more of them on the road? No, your mind's just telling you that's what you're looking for. Same thing goes with anything that we go from a goal out there.
You know what's funny? When I bought my first apartment complex, it was a 25 unit in California, and I
Love
bought
it.
it 178 a door. And I reached out to other brokers and I said, "Hey, I'm still in the market to buy something else." And then they asked me what I was looking for, and I told them under $200,000 a door anywhere in Ventura County, which is a small county. And then what their response was, they don't exist. And what I told them is they do exist. I just bought one and I've seen this one, and this one. So out of maybe the 20
Yeah.
deals that have sold this year, there was only three. I'm like, I only want one of those three. I'm okay with if I get one of them. Sure enough, another one comes up at 156 a door after the brokers told me that it didn't exist. Another one came up at 130 a door when all the
Wow.
other commercial brokers said that it didn't exist. And the reality was that it didn't exist to them, but they do exist. You just have to know what you want. And the fact is that 156 a door, there was 18 offers on it. But even when I looked at it, I'm like, I want that one because I know that the 156 a door is it comes up once every 2 3 years. They rarely
That's
come up, and if you're ready,
Yep.
then obviously it'll do it. What advice would you say to people that maybe have tried something and it hasn't worked out for them? Like
Well,
meaning, like
you just
let's say,
said it. I mean, you just literally gave the answer right there. Is that if you believe that it's possible, then you can't stop at the first no, right? Because imagine you were just like, hey, I want this, and you call it the first broker, and like, oh, it doesn't exist, right? Most 99% of people are just going to stop. 100%. Well, I call up this one broker, and he said I can't buy an apartment building for under 200 a unit, so I guess I can't, right? But you're like, no, I'm just going to keep going until I find it, right? Because I know it's out there. And what happens, right? It shows up. And so if you are saying, well, what should I do now? If you believe it's possible and you believe it's out there, then it's either that you have to surround yourself with other people that are going to give you better answers, or just keep asking or finding better questions. Because usually if I'm limited on where I'm going, it's usually because I don't have the right question to get the right answer. It's typically not the answer. Like I'm seeking an answer, but the answer is wrong. I just don't know how to ask the question yet.
now, would you agree to basically combine that with some sort of data as well too? Because, like, let's say I would have said, "Hey, I'm looking for something at $50,000 a door in
Yeah.
California." Then at that point, it's delusional versus, "Hey, look." So in that instance, we went back and looked at, okay, is it possible? Yes, it's possible because it's happened before. I just want one of those three. So maybe combining it with some data, or
Yeah, well, you have to have a reference point. So you have to be a
yeah,
realist,
it
right?
can't just
So
be
so a
like,
realist is that these exist, the opportunity is there. It's going to be really, really difficult to find, but I can do it. And that's
mhm,
the difference part of where it is right there is that you've seen it before. Right now, it's not like my grandma in like the Great Depression. She's like, well, milk used to be 5 cents, right?
yeah,
It's not like milk's going back to 5 cents. Like I saw it
exactly.
before. Like it's realist to the time, right? This can be in a working market. People, I just need to be patient and persistent with where I am. And these opportunities will be here because the data shows it will be there, right? That's your path forward because it gives you the principle to know that it can be accomplished, and it's not a start stop. Now, sometimes you just have to make sure the data is in the right part, right? Because good bad info in is bad info out. But if you can track it there and look at what's happening in the market and understand where it is, it's going to put you in a very good position to win.
Yeah. Here's a different question. What challenges do you see in the multifamily space right now?
Oh, it's interesting. The bid ask spread is really wide because lenders just don't know how to price out their debt right now, and it's making it very tricky. And because they want to be exposed and get out there and be able to loan, but then in the same part, it's very difficult for them to understand how to size up deals, right? Because we had a big run up in valuations, right? Rents are now trending off, right? So the lending world is going to continue to be an experience. And so you have to look at where they perceive the market going, right? We're going to have a couple more rates, right? We're done with the hikes, right? Like where do we stand, right? We're leveling off, but does that mean that they're going to stay flat for a while? They're going to increase a little bit, or we're just going to have this steep decline, right? We'll probably see them trail off somewhere in the next 24 to 48 months. I'm sure we will, but where does that go? Do we get back to 3% rates? Probably not. But on that front, we have to look at our business plan and say, is our business plan something that can succeed over the course of 5 or 10 years? Because the wild card right now is the 1 to 2 years. And if you're looking at doing something with a 1 2 year frame of mind, it can be tricky because there's just a lot of things that you can't control. Over the course of 5 to 10 years, that's a long time. You can course correct, do a lot of different things in that, and have a lot of things not go your way, but you can make changes to make it go your way because you can pivot and react. So understanding that you have to have a plan. You have to have time to execute the plan. You have to understand the plan is not going to go perfect, but you know what are my options to pivot alongside when it doesn't.
Yeah. Do you have any loans resetting in the next couple of years at the moment?
I
Like,
do. Yeah, I have one coming up for a refinance, and then the rest are made. Most of it is just 5-year banks right now. Um, what would I have? I have one in about 3 years, a couple that are out there for 4 or 5. I have one that's up for a refinance we're doing now that will be before the year's out right there. But nothing to the point that it's this massive, massive redevelopment or something that's
not like
going to
a
be a
bridge loan
very,
or
very
anything like
tricky
that.
thing. Correct.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then, what changes are you making to your investment strategy right now?
It's that constant flow is we've never been very short time frame minded. It's always been 3 to 7 years, right? With the really sweet spot being about 5. And so we've been really partitioning now. As I have 3 deals out there that have bridge, but they're two are fixed bridge, and one was a bridge that we were into the cap almost when we brought. Is that we're mainly looking at bank debt right now, or credit unions, because it gives us not the best terms, but the terms can move a lot more than you'll find still with the agency. But where I find it makes a lot of sense for us is that I do find that we're gonna find ourselves back to some better terms into the future. And like we said, is that 2 years, 3 years? I don't know, but you have a prepayment penalty that's not prohibitive, right? Maybe it's 1%. Credit unions have no prepayment penalty. So if times stay where they are and rates stay where they are, I have a 5-year fixed rate. I can hang out and just go with the market and make improvements, right? If it goes back in our favor and rates drop off here, well, I can change out and move into a different loan product with potentially some better terms, maybe agency or something else that will be in my favor without having that lock-in prepayment penalty that's going to be so expensive for me to get out of the loan.
I love it. Back to the 100 mile mindset. Have you done that 100 mile marathon more than one time, or is it a
I
one time
have.
thing?
Yeah. So
How
so
many
I've done
times is
three
that
now.
curiosity? Three.
3. Yeah, I've
That's
done
great.
3. I've done some 50s. I've done some 50Ks as well, and then just a bunch of other stuff in between.
That's crazy. Is 100 miles the largest you've ever done, or is that kind of
That's
like the
yeah,
limit?
101. If I had to get to the point, 101 is my longest. But yeah, 200s and 101.
You know the world record as to what's the most anybody has ever done, or
Oh, there's out there. There's people who have done some very long races. There's actually a couple out there. There's Moab 240. There's a couple 200-mile races. There's people that have done 300-mile races. There's a couple long ones out there. People have done some
it's
races for
crazy.
sure. Yeah.
Cool, man. Anything else that you think would be valuable to listeners?
Hey, you've asked some incredible questions. The value is in the action, right? I've never learned anything from standing still for a decade and just saying, okay, I hope it's going to come to me, right? I've learned from experience and just taking action and taking a step forward, because most of the time I don't know I wouldn't have known multifamily. I just didn't keep trying different things, and wouldn't know large multifamily. I just didn't keep getting in front of the opportunity to realize if it was fit or not.
I love it, man. Cool. Well, Jason, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I overlooked this, but if somebody wanted to maybe get in touch with one of your mentorship programs, if somebody wanted to learn a little bit more about mindset or buying larger apartment complexes, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you want to go, you can learn a lot from us at Yarusi Holdings, YARUSI Holdings.com. You find everything from that in the multifamily mastermind. We also have the Live 100 podcast, Live 100, live-100.com. You can find a lot about us and what we're doing on that side as well.
I love it, man. Well, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you.
To our viewers, we had Jason Yarusi. He talked about the 100 mile mindset. We talked a little bit about owning restaurants. We talked a little bit about house flipping. We talked a little bit about buying large apartment complexes. Thank you again. And if you've enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe. If you feel that it would help, make sure to hit that share button. Thanks again. And thanks, Jason.